We are on a roll with our videos that are gonna get me in trouble with the book community. Because today we are talking about unhealthy relationships, specifically Cardan and Jude from The Cruel Prince, and why unhealthy relationships are okay in literature. If you go to Goodreads and you browse through reasons people don't like The Cruel Prince or The Wicked King, especially The Cruel Prince though, because a lot of people who didn't like it never read book 2, but if you click on the 1-star and 2-star reviews and you start reading why people didn't like it, kind of the top reason is that they say Holly Black is encouraging unhealthy relationships, and I don't think that's true. I met Holly Black, and not once did she say Cardan and Jude are a healthy relationship. They're an interesting relationship. They're a volatile relationship. They're not a good relationship, and no one is saying that. If the only reason you don't like The Wicked King and The Cruel Prince is because of this relationship, I think that's fine, and I'm not telling you you have to like it, but I think maybe you might be missing the point. The point of The Cruel Prince is not to hold this relationship up on a pedestal and say that everyone should try to be like them or aspire to have this relationship. The whole point of the book is they're kind of obsessed with each other, and it's about unhealthy relationships. It's about how you can get hurt in an unhealthy relationship. I have been in unhealthy relationships. Not dating, but unhealthy friendships. And I think that's part of why I like Jude so much. Because I know what it's like to have this person around and you want to be around them and you're kind of envious of them. But at the same time, your brain is screaming, oh my gosh, this person's a psychopath. This person's insane. They're a narcissist. They're terrible for me. But you want to be around them. And just because Jude and Cardan have this relationship, I do not think Holly is encouraging you to go out and find an asshole and date an asshole. Now, if anybody tells you that Jude and Cardan is relationship goals, that's a red flag. For that person specifically, not for Holly Black. Nobody is looking at Game of Thrones and saying that George R.R. Martin is encouraging you to have sex with your twin sister. They might be saying that, but I think they're wrong, and I really hope he's not encouraging people to have sex with their twin sister. You know, I could do a whole video on the Dany and Khal Drogo relationship, but that's a whole different thing. Maybe I'll do that. But today it's Jude and Cardan. Because I think that's what makes the book so good, is it's going outside of our comfort zone. I don't usually read books about abusive relationships. Most people don't go out of their way to read books about abusive relationships. Most people don't go out of their way to write books about abusive relationships. But at the end of the day, that's what Jude and Cardan are. And you can be in love with someone and them not be good for you. And I haven't read the last book yet, obviously, because it's not out yet. But it is possible that Jude and Cardan end up together and end up happy, I guess. But that still doesn't make it a good relationship. But it can be good for them. And just because they end up in a relationship and they're not good for each other, that doesn't mean the book itself is bad. And again, I'm not telling you have to read this book. That's the beauty of literature. You don't have to read it unless your teacher tells you to. And if your teacher tells you to read this book, I'm kind of jealous. Because my teachers just made me read crap like Frankenstein, and I will never touch that book ever again. But again, that's a rant for a different day. So I think it's unfortunate that a lot of people discard this book just because they see this unhealthy relationship, because it's such a great exploration into what causes unhealthy relationships. We see Cardan struggling with his past abuse. We see Jude struggling with her dead parents and being raised by their murderer. So we have two very messed up people. And, I mean, Cardan does what a lot of abused people do, and that is he becomes an abuser. And So he throws up this, haha, look at me, I'm tough and I'm evil and I'm terrible. And Jude goes, I will be more terrible than you. And then she does, and Cardan's like, oh gosh, no, I did not think anyone actually believed that I was that terrible. Please stop. You're scaring me. That's the thing, is Cardan is terrible, but at the same time, he's very damaged. And that's what makes him so fascinating. Because we have a character who is not a good person. And there's a reason he's not a good person. Cool motive. Still murder. I think is something that really applies here. Because yes, he has this reason to be a terrible person. He's been abused by his brother. He's been neglected by his parents. He's thrown into this world that is cruel and horrible, just like Jude. And he chooses to become as cruel and horrible as the world itself is. And that's kind of a survival mechanism for a lot of people who have been abused, is they become abusers. The girl who bullied me in elementary school, looking back, I'm like, you must have had a horrible home life, and you were the only not white person in our school. And I kind of feel bad for her, because I'm sure it was hard being the only not white person in a school. Does that excuse her bullying me? No. But does that put the blame for the bullying on someone else? Maybe. Would she have bullied me if we were in a different situation? Probably not. A lot of bullies are bullies because they're jealous. The girl that I talked about that I thought was my best friend, not the one from elementary school, but the girl that I thought was my best friend for years, looking back, I realized it was a horribly toxic relationship and I should never have been in it in the first place. But I thought she was good for me. And at the end of the day, that was another relationship where she was horribly miserable and she was being picked on at home and she was having all of these problems and ended up turning those around and becoming that person that was the person who was tormenting her. And from my point of view, as someone who is not in that situation, I'm standing there going, girl, you are crazy. You are turning into the very person that you hate. But you know what? That's what happens to a lot of people who are abused. That's why we have phrases like Stockholm Syndrome. Because abuse is so insane and it just messes with the chemicals in your brain. And so this video is obviously getting kind of off track. The whole point of the video is that people don't have to be good. Cardan is not a good person. Jude, I would even argue, is not a good person. No one in this book is a good person. Before reading The Wicked King, I would have said Vivi is a good person, but even Vivi is starting to have some issues that are caused by growing up in Fairy. So maybe the only good people in this whole book is, I guess, Heather, and maybe Oak. And I think that's what the book is about. I think the book is about unhealthy relationships. To me, anyway. That's what I see when I read this book, is how easy it is for people to fall into these unhealthy relationships, and how for some people that is all they're ever gonna know. And that's what makes this book so tragic, but at the same time, so good. Cardan and Jude fit together. They work together because they're both very damaged people. That doesn't make them good. It doesn't really make them good for each other because they're damaging each other even more. So this video turned into a bit more of a rant than I wanted, but I do hope I got my point across that The Wicked King is not, and The Cruel Prince is not glorifying abuse. If anything, I think it's a good book to read if you don't understand what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. If you've never been in an abusive relationship, I pray that you read this book so you can realize how hard it is to get out of it. Because the girl that I knew, I thought she was my best friend in the entire world, and she tried to destroy my life and caused me to be suicidal and caused me to have depression. Now, there were other things, it's not all her fault, but she definitely didn't help. But at the end of the day, she's even more damaged than I am, because that's what happens. Damaged people damage other people. A not damaged person isn't gonna go out of their way to make somebody else miserable. So if you don't understand abusive relationships, or if you've never been in one, I think this would be a great book for you to read. Or if you're coming out of an abusive relationship like me, this is an easy book to connect with the characters, because I've never seen a character like this in a book before. That's what makes it so interesting to me, is I'm sitting there like, oh boy, girl, I know exactly how you feel right now. So that is my rant slash info dump slash more about myself than I ever intended to put on the internet. Because I don't really talk about that girl a whole lot, or the one from elementary school, either of them. Moral of the story: unhealthy relationships are unhealthy. If you are in one in real life, please, please do what you can to get help. There are wonderful hotlines out there. There are wonderful people who want to help you. Talk to a guidance counselor at school. Talk to a trusted adult. That being said, I think it's okay to have unhealthy relationships in fiction because they exist in real life. Thank you for watching. I feel really weird saying, please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you agree, if you disagree. Have you read The Cruel Prince? Did you not read it because of this reason? Have I given you a different perspective? Comment away. But if you are outwardly mean toward myself, if you say anything derogatory about me or other people, I will probably delete that comment. Possibly. I don't know. I might just leave the comment and go, well, you're a dick. It depends on how I feel. So I did take off my jacket, obviously. I'm now in a black shirt, but I thought of one more thing that I want to say before we end our video on unhealthy relationships. Kind of the main point of the video that I forgot to summarize is there's a difference between a book like The Cruel Prince that has an unhealthy relationship and everybody knows it's unhealthy, or you should know it's unhealthy, and a book like Twilight or 50 Shades of Grey that holds up an unhealthy relationship and says, yo, do this. So that's the main difference in my opinion. Once again, let me know what you think. Thank you.